According to popular legend, a door gunner on a Vietnam-era Huey had a life expectancy of just 5 minutes in combat. While exaggerated, this captured a harsh reality. Door gunners had the highest casualty rate of any helicopter crew position. What most people don't know is that these door gunners didn't just fight and die in Vietnam, they revolutionized warfare itself. Their sacrifice and the lessons learned from their dangerous job led directly to the attack helicopter concept we know today, from the AH-1 Cobra all the way to the modern AH-64 Apache. Today we're going to show you the complete story, how soldiers in exposed helicopter positions became the foundation for an entirely new way of fighting wars, and the specific price they paid to teach the military these lessons. When American forces arrived in Vietnam, military commanders were certain that speed and altitude alone would keep helicopters safe. The UH-1 Huey was an airborne truck, pilot, co-pilot, and crew chief hauling infantry across paddies and jungle, trusting that quick maneuvers would provide protection. Well, they were wrong. The Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army had turned the landscape itself into a weapon. Using a complex network of underground tunnels and dense jungle cover, they could disappear and reappear at will, armed with AK-47s, machine guns, and anti-aircraft weapons, all pointed at slow-moving, defenseless transport aircraft. The usually predictable flight paths and slow hovering speeds while inserting troops at hot landing zones made helicopters sitting ducks. By war's end, 2,591 UH-1 Hueys had been shot down out of the total 4,869 helicopters lost in Vietnam. Helicopters needed protection, and they needed it yesterday. Something had to be done with whatever was available. The first stopgap was simple and desperate. Remove the cabin doors, strap an M60 machine gun to a bungee cord, and let the crew chief lean out to return fire. That helped a bit, but it only covered one flank. So a fourth man was added to the crew, the designated door gunner, tasked with guarding the opposite side. Most door gunners were enlisted men, often barely out of high school, who volunteered for the job or were assigned based on availability. They quickly became essential crew members, trained to improve the overall performance of a helicopter in combat, assist pilots during landings, provide covering fire, help with loading and unloading, and support helicopter maintenance. The primary weapon was the M60 machine gun, a 23-pound gas-operated weapon that fired 7.62mm NATO rounds at 550 to 650 rounds per minute. Door gunners had access to around 2,000 rounds of ammunition between their boots, with every fifth round being a tracer to help them see where their shots were going. They learned to ration every belt since resupply mid-flight was impossible. The earliest door guns were simply strapped to bungee cords for quick deployment. As the role became more formalized, M60s were mounted on swiveling pintle mounts for better stability and control. However, combat experience showed that the rigid mounts limited firing angles. So many gunners returned to bungee cord systems or handheld weapons for maximum maneuverability. This practice was commonly called using a, quote, 360, unquote. Protection was minimal. Flak jackets stopped fragments, not rifle rounds, and ceramic chest plates were so heavy and bulky that many gunners left them on the staging pad. Safety equipment was basic, monkey harnesses that allowed them to move freely while remaining tethered to prevent falls. Some gunners would lean out on the helicopter's skids to get better firing angles, completely exposed but determined to protect their aircraft. Training was often minimal compared to the complexity of the job. Door gunners had to learn to fire from a moving helicopter at moving targets on the ground, compensating for wind, aircraft movement, and target motion. Most of this learning happened through on-the-job experience, with veteran crew members teaching newcomers the basics when possible. There was no way to simulate the reality of operating from an exposed aircraft position while under enemy fire. Picture this: you're barely 19, sitting in the open doorway of a Huey helicopter, flying at 100 feet above hostile jungle. Your 23-pound M60 machine gun feels like dead weight in your hands, and you're responsible for keeping everyone on board alive. The rotor wash is deafening, the aircraft is vibrating constantly, and through your headphones you hear the pilot's voice, quote, going into a hot LZ, unquote. A hot landing zone meant the enemy was waiting. As the Huey descended, you could see muzzle flashes from the tree line. AK-47 rounds would start snapping past the aircraft, some close enough that you could hear them over the engine noise. PK machine gun fire would rake the helicopter in long bursts, while RPG rounds streaked past, any one of which could bring down the aircraft instantly. Your job was to return fire, laying down suppressive fire to keep enemy heads down while the helicopter landed or hovered for troop insertion. The only real defense was altitude, speed, and the sheer curtain of fire you could lay down during approach, touchdown, and takeoff, the most dangerous and vulnerable moments. You were literally in the most exposed position on the aircraft, firing at an enemy who knew exactly where you were sitting and was doing everything possible to kill you. The M60 was effective, but it had deadly limitations. The barrel would overheat during sustained fire and need changing. Precious seconds during which you couldn't return fire while the enemy kept shooting. When multiple enemy positions opened fire simultaneously, sustained fire was often the only option, regardless of overheating risks. Unlike fixed-wing pilots who fought from a distance, door gunners could see their enemies face to face. They were close enough to see individual soldiers, close enough to watch the effects of their fire, close enough to look into the eyes of people trying to kill them. This psychological burden was unlike anything else in modern warfare. The enemy quickly learned that taking out the door gunner was a priority. Machine gun muzzle flashes made gunners easy targets, and a helicopter without defensive fire was much easier to destroy or force down. M60s were soon upgraded with miniguns and grenade launchers to boost firepower, and door gunners were saving a lot of Hueys, but their casualty rate was the highest of any helicopter crew position, which makes sense, since they were completely exposed to enemy fire. Weather added another layer of danger. Monsoon rains could cause weapons to jam, reduce visibility to nearly zero, and make flying conditions treacherous. The combination of rain, rotor wash, and combat stress created an environment where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. The psychological burden on door gunners was severe. Fighting at close range, where they could see individual enemy soldiers, created trauma, unlike other combat roles. Many developed what we now recognize as PTSD, nightmares, survivor guilt, difficulty readjusting to civilian life. The intimate nature of helicopter combat, combined with constant exposure to death, left lasting mental scars that many veterans carried for decades. Door gunners often faced complex situations where distinguishing between combatants and civilians was nearly impossible in the chaos of combat. The rules of engagement provided guidelines, but split-second decisions with friendly troops in danger and incoming fire created moral burdens that haunted many long after the war ended. Beyond the psychological toll, the mounting casualties proved that individual courage couldn't solve a tactical problem. Field units began modifying Hueys into improvised gunships, with maintenance crews attaching weapon mounts, rocket pods, and grenade launchers to UH-1Bs and UH-1Cs. These early Huey gunships carried a mix of weapons. The side doors still had M60 machine guns, but now they had more powerful systems mounted externally. Twin rocket pods could hold up to 38 Hydra 70 rockets. Some had miniguns fixed forward, while others used chin-mounted 40mm grenade launchers. Door gunners remained in their exposed positions, but now they had serious firepower backing them up. However, these modifications created new problems. The added weapons increased weight, reducing hover time and limiting support for extended operations. The weapons were mounted on airframes designed for transport, not combat. Door gunners remained in their exposed positions, and the fundamental weaknesses hadn't changed. They were still getting shot at horrific rates. The tactical concept worked, but the cost in aircrew lives was unsustainable. Air cavalry tactics were effective, but troops needed protection during insertion and extraction, and current solutions weren't adequate. The Army needed a helicopter built for combat from the ground up, faster, more survivable, with better protected crews. Bell Helicopter took the UH-1's proven T-53 turboshaft engine and rotor system, then removed everything non-essential for fighting. The result was the AH-1 Cobra, a slim tandem-seat helicopter with a narrow fuselage that reduced both drag and target profile. At 171 miles per hour maximum speed, It was significantly faster than transport helicopters. The gunner sat in front, pilot behind and above, both with clear views and flight controls. If one crew member was hit, the other could fly home. The crew was protected inside an armoured cockpit instead of operating from vulnerable open positions. For armament, the AH-1G had a rotating chin turret with 7.62mm miniguns or 40mm grenade launchers. Under the stub wings, it could carry rocket pods loaded with 2.75-inch Hydra rockets, up to 38 rockets in the larger M200 launchers. The first Cobras arrived in Vietnam in August 1967 at Bien Hoa Air Base. On September 4th, the type scored its first combat kill by sinking a sampan boat. The first AH-1 unit, the 334th Assault Helicopter Company, was declared operational on October 6, 1967. Compared to armed Hueys with exposed door gunners, they were dramatically more effective and survivable. The Cobra offered fast, flexible, combat-focused aircraft that could react faster than fixed-wing support and operate in tighter spaces, all without exposing crew members to enemy fire. Commanders soon developed hunter-killer teams. Fast OH-6A Kayu's scout helicopters would fly low to draw enemy fire and reveal hidden positions, while Cobras loitered higher, ready to attack once contact was made. This tactic was extremely effective but dangerous for scout crews. The OH-6A was nicknamed, quote, "Loach," unquote, and often used as bait. The clearest example came on June 18, 1968, when First Lieutenant Larry Taylor flew his Cobra, supporting a surrounded reconnaissance patrol. After 40 minutes of attack runs with nearly exhausted ammunition, the patrol was still in danger. Taylor landed his Cobra under fire and had 4 men climb onto the skids and rocket pods, flying them out while they clung to the aircraft exterior. For this action, he received the Medal of Honor. Those door gunners who faced that legendary 5-minute life expectancy in Vietnam did more than survive impossible odds. They proved that helicopter warfare needed to evolve. Their sacrifice led directly to every attack helicopter flying today. The AH-1 Cobra became the AH-64 Apache, and every modern attack helicopter traces its lineage back to those first door gunners with their M60s. These soldiers were the bridge between flying trucks and modern rotary wing warfare. They showed the world what helicopter combat could become while paying the ultimate price for those lessons. From makeshift gun mounts to sophisticated attack helicopters, it all began with soldiers willing to take on dangerous missions to bring their brothers home. Every time an Apache protects ground troops, every time helicopter crews fly with proper armor and weapons, every time military planners design aircraft around crew protection rather than transport capacity, that's the legacy of Vietnam's door gunners. If you found this story worth remembering, consider subscribing to help us tell more stories of the soldiers whose sacrifice changed warfare forever.